Hey everyone, welcome back to my podcast, Suchitra's Life, and I'm Suchitra. I'm back with another book review, and I am acknowledging it upfront that I did use AI for writing the script of this episode because even though I completed reading the book, since it was a little, what do I say, it's a disturbing one, and I was struggling to recall some moments from the book, or rather, I didn't want to recall certain disturbing things. So I took help of AI to generate a part of this script for today's episode. The book I'm going to talk about is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I hope I'm pronouncing the author's name correctly. He is a Vietnamese American author. All right. So, in this novel, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, Ocean Vuong tells a deeply emotional and touching story about love, pain, family, and finding one's identity. So, basically, the book starts by, the author, or rather the narrator, attempting to write a letter to his mother. It is like, what do we say? There is a subgenre in books called epistolary. Epistolary. So this book is written as a letter from the narrator. So the narrator in this book is called Little Dog. That's what his mother and grandmother call him. And while writing these letters, the narrator talks about the various incidents in his life and also the various incidents of his grandmother's and mother's life. So it's basically non-linear storytelling format written in the form of letters. So here's the narrator is just recollecting his childhood that went by, his adolescence, and many phases of his life. And there we get to also see his grandmother's and his mother's life from his point of view. The novel specifically talks about the experience of being an immigrant, especially when you are torn between two cultures. So, uh, a little dog's story is personal, but it also speaks to many people who feel different or don't quite fit in. He struggles with his relationship with his mother, who is deeply affected by past trauma from the war and has trouble expressing her emotions. So, this relationship with his mother is central to the story. As the narrator grows up, he begins to understand more about himself. He realizes his sexual identity, which is different from others, and he faces difficulties dealing with his feelings, especially because his family does not understand or accept his sexuality. His relationship with his mother and grandmother is complicated as both women have been hurt by the trauma of war and their difficult lives. Um, in this book, we also see the narrator describing his first love. He shares the love and pain he experiences with a boy, and the novel explores how love can heal but also hurt people in different situations. The narrator does look back on the trauma caused by the Vietnam War, which has affected his family for generations. So, one thing I'd like to, what do I say? I'd like to call this to attention to people who are going to pick up this book is that you're going to be reading about trauma. You're going to be reading about violence and things that are really cruel, um, in the big bad world. So I picked this book because I just liked the title. I didn't even read any um, review before, or even back cover information, like nothing. And that's how I'd like to approach reading books, because I didn't want to have any preconceived notion about a particular thing and all. It's just that the title was really interesting, and that's how I picked this one up without knowing what all I would be coming across. So, people who are planning to read this one, just be prepared that there are going to be a lot of trauma, um, what war can do to people. That really is something. It's very deep. When people, when you meet people who survive war, you only look at them as like some brave people who manage to get out of a situation, but it's deeper than that. And I wasn't prepared. Really, I wasn't prepared as to what all I'd be reading in this one. But I'm glad I did. Um, you have to, at least I've had to step away from it a couple of times just to let it sink. So that might happen with you guys as well. The story does talk about violence, but not just physical violence. It shows how people can be hurt by emotional pain, shame, and the weight of unspoken histories. Um, of course, there's our narrator struggling with his sexual identity as a part of an immigrant family. But reading this helped me understand how hard it can be to find a place in the world when you are different. Um, like I said before, the themes of this particular book is um, not just war and the trauma that it gives, but it's also about identity and self discovery, because the author does struggle with his understanding of who he is. And it's also about family and love. We see that the relationships that the author has with his mother and grandmother, how complicated they can be, because his mother survived the horrors of Vietnam War. So she's emotionally distant and has difficulty showing love. Well, our narrator tries to reach out to her and understand her pain, even though she cannot express her own. So, this creates a complicated but powerful relationship, showing how love can be both beautiful and painful. Another theme in this book is, like I said before, trauma. It talks about the impact of trauma. The, of course, the Vietnam War has left deep emotional scars on the narrator's mother and grandmother. So, these experiences of war affect their ability to communicate and love in healthy ways. The story shows how trauma is passed down from one generation to the next, and how it can be hard to break the cycle of pain. Our narrator tries to find healing through his own experiences, like his love for another boy, but it's not easy. And also, an interesting thing, like the way this novel is written, is something you will connect, especially if you are non native speaker of English, I'm sure you would connect to certain parts of the novel, especially the way he writes about how his mother would try to understand English or even speak English so that she can just at least survive in her job. Well, finally, I'd like to say that this is a difficult read, especially for somebody who's very sensitive. And I'd like to warn you guys that use your conscience to pick this one up, and happy reading.